Welcome back, everyone. I'm Massimo and this is the Sober Method podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with George Haymaker, applied neuroscience educator, brain performance advisor, former entrepreneur, and recovering alcoholic who turned his rock bottom battle with addiction into a mission, helping high performers rewire their brains for clarity, calm, and sustainable success. We're going to talk about what real confidence looks like when you stop fighting your own brain and start working with it. George, welcome to the show.
Massimo, great to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me and look forward to sharing some stories and wisdom together.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Well, you were a serial entrepreneur for over 35 years, building and scaling companies in multiple industries. And on the outside, you looked completely put together. Yet inside, you were kind of in a thousand pieces. So, if you would, could you walk us back to the moment you realized the old coping mechanisms were no longer working?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd agree with the fact that I always look together on the outside. We like to think we do,
Right.
but other people may see it differently. So, my story involves a long entrepreneurial career, like you said, during which I was highly activated. My nervous system was always um, on fire. I mean, I was very intense, didn't have a great relationship with stress. Everything, I was constantly trying to prove myself. I ultimately realized that these patterns and need to prove myself. Um, I was struggling with self esteem. Were all a function of kind of the patterns I had developed from childhood and my upbringing. And so that's how I navigated my life. And then I chose to be an entrepreneur, which only threw gasoline on fire because, as we all know, being an entrepreneur is a pretty stressful occupation. Um, I was pretty successful, and some of the businesses were more so than others. But underneath it all, I was, really struggling mentally. I didn't even realize it was abnormal. I just thought that that's how life was. I didn't question it, but I got so activated that I started to calm with substances and alcohol and some other drugs along the way. Ultimately, it was pain pills and alcohol that brought me down at the end. Um, and what happened is my brain began to learn that that was a very good way to get relief. And
Yeah.
so, when we wire our brains, we develop these patterns, and we teach the brain what works and what doesn't, and it grabs a hold of certain things because its job is to protect us and find relief, keep us safe, meet our needs. And so when it's activated like that, it's looking for the quickest, fastest, most efficient forms of relief it can find. And the thing about substances is they're highly effective, and they don't take a lot of effort, and they do a really good job. And so the brain loves them. And so I became a very good functioning alcoholic, and that lasted for a while until my late 40s, and I became fully addicted. And then it started to, and for anybody that's been addicted to anything, you probably will be familiar with the idea that you go from a place where you can kind of control it, manage it, keep it under control to some degree until it crosses an imaginary line that you don't see coming, and it goes from impulsive to compulsive, and you cannot control it anymore, and it runs your life, and there's nothing more important, and you're just simply consuming to feel some degree of normal and to stop from withdrawing. And that's what happened to me in my late 40s. I hit a hard bottom at the age of 52. I got so bad, I was taking 50 pain pills a day and drinking 2 bottles of vodka. It was just running my life. I was up every 2 hours, throwing up, having to consume more in order to settle my system. And it was ugly. And my wife left, and, the whole drill. I was all alone, and so I poured myself into rehab. And that was the moment at the age of 52 where I decided, I'm going to die. And either I'm going to die, and am I okay with that? Or am I going to try something different? And that was that point.
Huh. Very, very interesting. Very moving too. Thanks for sharing all of that. Um, so you mentioned in there that uh, there was some childhood trauma and possibly even emotional dysregulation that happened that followed you then into adulthood. So, how would you say those early experiences wired the patterns that then showed up as this anxiety and your brain on fire, as you said, and then ultimately calming it with substances?
Yeah, so it gets back to understanding, and again, I didn't know any of this growing up or as an adult. It was only until I dove into it that I began to figure this out. It all gets back to how the brain is designed and what it's trying to accomplish. And so the brain is designed as a set of patterns, neurological patterns, and they represent all of our past experiences, all of the things that we've done, the thoughts that we've had, the emotions that we've had, um, the behaviors that we've engaged in. And so it assembles these things like a filing cabinet in a computer and stores them away for later use as reference points. Um, and so what it uses them for is to try to meet our needs. And there are six core psychological needs that every human being has, which are autonomy, equality, significance, skillfulness, stability, and togetherness. And so the brain is always trying to figure out how to meet those needs, keeping us safe, protecting us the best way it knows how, and and trying to keep us alive so we have babies and can continue with the species. That's really, and that design, was hundreds of thousands of years ago, and it really hasn't changed much. Our frontal cortex is, we've gotten smarter, but other than that, the brain still, its mission statement is still that. Okay. And so, and so just imagine like you're growing up in an environment that's not functional, and your needs are, your brain's trying to get your needs met, but they're not getting met. And so you've got to try to figure out how to respond to that. And you're a kid. Okay. And so that is where a lot of this stuff happens. And so the brain starts to develop these patterns of meeting needs in dysfunctional ways and storing them away. And that's the only data that it has. And so that's the problem, is the brain can't figure things out. It can only reference patterns that it already has. Okay. And that's where a lot of stuff gets off the rails, is because we develop these patterns early in childhood. The brain keeps referencing because that's all the data it has. And so we go into adulthood, it's still referencing the same patterns. And so things like trying to be perfect, trying to please people, trying to prove yourself, trying to feel worthy. All those things can stem from childhood, and they just continue to carry on, and we don't have very good patterns to meet those needs. Okay, so in my childhood, there was a ton of moving around, 10 different schools in my formative years, uh, heavy-handed discipline, physical discipline in my household. So as I was getting more uncomfortable by having to move to so many new environments, I was acting out more, and my dad would and my mom would physically discipline me. So that may only made me feel worse. Okay. And so my only real connections to the world were my mom and my dad, and they were basically telling me through their actions I wasn't good enough, and and beating me as a result. And so then there was also some sexual abuse from, an outside individual from the family. My parents moved overseas when I was in ninth grade. I went to boarding school here in the US, fending for myself. So I had these unhelpful environments that produced unhelpful patterns. Needs weren't being met. My brain struggling. Whenever your brain is trying to meet your needs and it can't figure out how, it's like a gears grinding. And that's where all this heavy handed metal friction, low tension comes from. Okay. The brain's trying to figure things out. It can't, doesn't have any good answers. And so it grinds. And so that grinding left unaddressed, unmitigated, unmanaged, because you don't know how, um, morphs, accumulates into anxiety. So I had high levels of anxiety. And then it can actually, depression can result. And so that's where these things begin to accumulate and take hold later on, is this mental friction that never gets resolved because we don't know how the brain works. So that's what happened to me. And that, now what led into the story I told you earlier about why I started to cope, is because I had all this I mean, we all know that mental friction doesn't feel good, right? I mean, it's uncomfortable. And so we're looking for any way to get out of it that we can. And when we find substances which give us higher levels of relief of any than anything else we can find naturally in life that's healthier, the brain learns that, man, this is really effective. I don't even have to go exercise to get rid of it. Um, I can just go to the cabinet across the kitchen, grab
Mhm.
my vodka bottle, and bingo, it's done. And so that's why the brain keeps predicting to do this coping behaviors over and over again, is because it works so well.
Yeah. No, you're so right. And that's exactly what anyone listening who's struggling with addiction, that's exactly what we all did and all are doing. Um, so this is very interesting. You had that discipline, you had the all of this that shaped you. And so you forced your own discipline upon yourself and then harnessed it with willpower, if I'm understanding it all correctly. And then suddenly you find yourself, I have to do something. I'm going to fix this. So you went to retraining your brain. So what does that shift look like in practice? Like you're this high performer who's successful on paper, but you're so exhausted on the inside. I mean, what's that look like?
Well, I'm glad I went to rehab because I had to make this my full-time job. Recovering is not easy, and I was in bad physical and emotional and psychological shape. And so, I bounced around between a couple rehabs over a 6 to 8 month period. I think in total, I spent 3.5 months in rehabs. And really, I needed to separate myself from the world, get physically away from any substances that would tempt me, and allow my system through distance and time to begin to heal while I was learning what to do different in my life. Because this is, you got to remember 52 years of living a certain way, and now I have to live completely differently. So I'm basically telling myself everything you've done didn't work, and now you have to find a new way. Now you can just imagine to the brain that is used to just operating off what it knows, and you are telling your brain that it has to operate completely differently, it's scared to death. It is fearful because it just doesn't know what that means. The brain is a prediction machine. It basically um, reads the room, reads the environment, what's going on in the moment, and goes back to its past memories to pull things forward that allows it to predict what's going to happen next and how we should think, feel, and act in response. Okay. And now you're telling it that all those things it has in its data file are basically wrong. And now we have to put new data in there. And that's really what we're doing. And so the great news is, and what I was very relieved to find out, is that the brain's capable of doing that. So the brain is not fixed. We're not broken. We just have some bad data and it has to be updated. We need like a 24-hour data reset to cleanse all this garbage out of there, these patterns that the brain has been using, and um, build new ones and install them in the brain properly so it begins to prefer these new patterns and predict them. Because what we want at the end of the day, this is very important, is we don't want to have to use willpower. Willpower is a very expensive uh, um, endeavor. It is highly expensive metabolically. It's the most expensive part of any activity that we use. And think of your brain as like a resource tank that only has so much resource in a day. And if you have to use willpower versus letting the brain automatically bring forward what you should be doing, and you have to force yourself, you are spending 2 to 3 times as much mental resource doing that, fighting what your brain is trying to tell you. That fight is very expensive metabolically. And so that what happens is you run out of energy in the middle of the day and you're drained.
Mhm.
And just think what it's like when you're already coming off addiction. I mean, you're just a mess. And so what we want to do is translate what we know we should do into patterns that we can install in the brain so that it begins to go to those patterns and predict those automatically into our consciousness so we don't have to fight it or work with it or force it anymore.
Yeah. No. So well said. And you're touching on this deep understanding of the brain and how it can change your entire life, without recognizing it. And so in your book, your work, your coaching, what's the biggest mindset or identity shift that you see people make? And for folks who want to get a deeper take on everything that you're doing and your neuroscience approach, is georgehaymaker.com still the best hub, or do you have somewhere else that you prefer people to go and connect with you?
No, that's the hub. That's where everything lives. And I've got all kinds of ways to work with people. I meet you where you are. We figure out what works for your schedule, what time and time increments you can commit. I have retreats here in Napa that I do, online coaching, a lot of education where I put this information in your hands so that you can guide and direct your own outcomes. This is not like therapy where we sit around and talk about problems. We're designing solutions, getting you moving, and putting the solutions in your hands so that not only are you a part of this resolution, but you're part of guiding and mastering your mind for the rest of your life. This is the most important meta skill you could ever have. How does your brain work? How is it designed? What is it trying to accomplish? And how can you partner with it to make it do what you want to do? I am telling you, from somebody that sat desperate in rehab to where I am today, this is entirely possible. All it takes is you committing that you are going to take this very fun step, learn how your brain works, and figure out how you can use that to improve your life. So, yeah, George Haymaker.
And you also run what you call the Brain Club that helps professionals optimize performance without a crash. And for listeners who are feeling stuck, even while they're totally crushing it externally, I mean, what does that look like for someone? I mean, what would they get out of the Brain Club?
A roadmap, an operating manual to their brain.
Okay.
What we don't seem to understand, what I didn't understand, let me put it that way, is that the brain is not a fixed entity. You're not just born with what you have the capability. It is like a car engine or a computer. It's an operating system. And the realm of performance levels that the brain can reach, good and bad, is on a very broad spectrum. And so if you run your car from the time you buy it till the time you sell it at 200,000 miles, never take it in for tune-ups, never take it in for oil and filter changes, it's going to start running like crap. And so the brain is very similar in that it's an organ that is an operating system, and we have to structure our lifestyle and manage our mental experience to get the most out of it. I just, everybody can identify with pain points that they have mentally: fatigue, fog, irritation, overthinking, procrastination. Okay. Those are all outcomes of a poorly performing operating system. So if you understand the root causes of those things and can surgically go in and resolve them because you have this relationship and a knowledge of your brain, what better is that in the world is there than that? Okay. You can keep your brain at tip top performance shape always by knowing what it needs and how to craft lifestyle and how to intervene when you're experiencing something that's not helpful. You know exactly what's happening. You know the root cause. You know what solutions to put in place as a result. So the Brain Club is really just this all encompassing environment that I invite people into, and it involves education, coaching of various types. And you could not even be struggling. You could be not struggling with addiction. You could be not saying, there's really nothing that badly going on in my life, but I just want to know how my brain works and how to optimize its performance so I can even get more. And I'm just curious. Come in and do that, okay? Because there's just so much benefit and ROI that comes from understanding how this organ works and working with it.
Yeah, George, everything you just described, it's amazing. I feel like I'm listening to myself in some ways, so it's really kind of cool because sober is about spotting those old patterns, rewiring your identity, creating the new neural pathways, which is like the center observe behavior execute steps of sober. And so where you're observing that old wiring, you map a new route, then you execute a test in real life to see if it changed. And if it didn't, then you make adjustments and then you try again. So when you got going, when you started figuring this out, how did you apply that initially to your own recovery?
Well, I didn't have this mapping that I have that I have now. Like, I didn't
Sure.
have all this knowledge. And so really what I did is I went into AA, which was a good landing spot for me, while I was doing research and reading about neuroscience and psychology and a whole bunch of other modalities and disciplines. So I was kind of going both paths. And I just kind of stopped thinking I knew better. I stopped thinking that I had the answers because obviously I didn't. I mean, the evidence was everywhere. And so I started listening to other people. I started reading and taking that information in and just cogitating about it. I started listening to my sponsor. I did whatever he told me. And the idea of just releasing and feeling less burdened and like feeling like you have to be in control for that period of time is very liberating, actually. You know, you can just say, I'm going to just give up on everything that I kind of have known and try something new and different, see what the world has to offer. And so that's kind of what I did at the beginning until, like you said, I started using everything I was learning I was using myself as a test tube to see how it worked. So it was cause and effect. Okay, let's try this. What's the effect? So you have to be very curious and inquisitive, read the signals. And that's part of what developing this relationship with your brain is about is your brain is always trying to talk to you. It's giving you signals. We just kind of blow through those signals as like discomfort or something, but we're not listening to it. So it is trying to talk to us. There's a unique language, and the our ability to listen to it, be objective with it, treat the brain as our partner, not as something we have to be overwhelmed by. I really encourage people to step away from their brain and have this at distance relationship with it where there's give and take, scratching of each other's backs. I have to give it what it needs to give me what I want back. I have to listen to what it is saying so that I can know when it's struggling and what it needs in return. It's very much like a baby that's crying. It's either hungry or has to have its diaper changed. When the brain is uncomfortable, it's telling you something. So we try to help people understand what those signals mean, and is something working? Is it not working? Let's do more of what is, less of what isn't. And so, to your point, pattern reconstruction is all about designing what we think will work, will meet our needs better, trying it, letting the brain tell you how it's going, our needs being met better than before, and adjusting, tweaking. What those are in neuroscience are called prediction errors. In other words, the brain is predicting something, we don't quite like it, so we question it, we change it, and that tells the brain you're on the right track, but we're still not there yet. And so we have to keep tweaking until we settle on something that really lands and it becomes super meaningful to us. The brain is not interested in hearing what you have to say. It's interested in seeing what you feel. And it takes what you feel about a pattern, and when it feels good and right and in coherence and in alignment and satisfies your needs, and all of a sudden you calm, it looks at that and says, bingo, red ding 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 ding. This this pattern works. And so then it will give it a very high priority weighting, log it away, and say, this one I'm going to put some asterisks by because it works really well. And then we build the next pattern and the next one. And so really, this is really mental skill development. If you have ever worked at acquiring a new skill, language, instrument, sport, work, career, you know that it takes time, going to the gym and building bigger muscles. This is an ongoing, endless pursuit of getting better and better at something. Mental experience construction is a never-ending pursuit of finding the best patterns.
Oh, you totally nailed it. I love that. I love the fact that you said it never ends because I stress that all the time is that you're always improving. It's continuous improvement of the brain. And if you don't look at it that way, you're going to just completely fall over eventually. So let me ask you this. When you started observing your own brain and your own nervous system responses, what behavior were you most surprised about? And what small daily change do you think that you've seen the most compounded, interest paid on? Like, what's the single thing that you think has netted you the greatest result, if you can think of one?
Boy, there's so much. The biggest thing is I have I was going to say mastery of my mind, but I under let me there's okay, to your point earlier about you're always on working at this. There's nothing like you never master life. You're just getting closer, hopefully. And so that's kind of where I'm at is I'm on this path. I know it'll never end and I don't really want it to end. I just want to try to become more masterful at my mental experience. So what I'm fairly good at now is I used to have a mental experience or an encounter with the environment and my patterns would just launch immediately into my consciousness. I was highly reactive. If I felt like somebody was doing me dirty, I would go from 0 to 10 in a heartbeat. Okay. Now, um, I have new patterns, so I don't go from 0 to 10 anymore. It takes me a lot. But I also am able to watch what my brain is predicting into my consciousness and ask myself, where did that come from? Because here's the beauty. Here's the most important thing. Nothing that ever comes into your consciousness is true or has to be. It's all negotiable. It You and I, Massimo, right now are
Mhm.
sitting in this same environment and different things are coming into our consciousness because we have different past experiences that our brain is using to predict differently into this situation. Hopefully we're both having fun, but you,
Yes, yes.
but you know what I mean. So
Uh-huh.
so that being the case, if our mental experience comes from our past patterns and we don't like our mental experience or some part of it, then we know that we're not stuck with it. We have to identify the prediction, what is causing that prediction, and we have to then analyze it and say, "Huh, how do we get rid of that and put something different in its place?" We have to design it. We have to practice it, feel it, practice it, like a lot of times so that the brain gets enough experiential evidence that
Mhm.
it begins to get a higher score than the old one. So the brain starts to predict that. And that's really what this is all about is just an ongoing evaluation and review of your mental experience, what's working, what's not, um, and what do I want to change? And then I have the skill set to change it. And so it's very comforting. It's like you don't have to, you just know that you're not stuck with any of this garbage that sometimes pops into your head. Like you have choices and you have the wherewithal, and the brain is willing to change and accept a new pattern in place of the one that it's currently giving you.
Well, everyone, here's the sober move that I want you to take with you this week. And I'm going to build directly upon some of the principles that George was just talking about. So, first of all, I want you to observe the moment your nervous system gets hijacked today, and then notice the physical sensations first, whether that's that tight chest, the racing thoughts, the urge to reach for something to calm it down, and name the old pattern without any judgment. Whatever it is, just recognize it. And then in the behavior step, I want to interrupt that automatic loop for create a 30-second just like neural pause and ask yourself, what is the brain trying to protect me from right now? And then consciously choose one small regulated response instead of whatever your old autopilot reaction would have been. And then the next time this comes up, I want you to execute that new response at least 3 times and pay attention to how your energy shifts because that brain feedback loop, if you step back and listen to it, you're going to see something different. So, George, we have a tradition on this podcast where each guest answers a question from my last guest. And then afterwards, I'm going to ask you a question for my next one. So, Daryl Dittmer left this question for you. What is the one thing that you haven't done that you need to do and you're going to execute it in the next 3 days?
Boy, okay. I am going to finish revising my website.
Oh, excellent. It's in need of update, I take it.
Well, actually, I'm right in the middle of it, but
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna finish doing it. So it's
Oh,
an easy one because sometimes, and this is another thing, getting involved in something new is hard for us because
mhm,
the other thing the brain does is it weighs a situation and calculates, is this worth the resources to do it? And that's where we will lack motivation sometimes is when the brain says, I don't see enough ROI in what you're proposing for me to allocate resources to it. It withholds energy and the neurotransmitters like dopamine, and that's why you feel flat. And
mhm.
so, um, yeah, so I am going to finish that because, frankly, I'm excited that I'm doing it and feels good.
Well, fantastic. I'm going to check it out next week. So now it's your turn. What's the one question you'd like to leave for my next guest?
Okay, this is going to stump somebody because I have no idea like what they're going to be talking about. But what is your mental experience costing you?
Oh, that's a fantastic one. I'm looking forward to that one. It's locked in, and I'll definitely give it to my next guest. Well, George, you get the final 30 seconds. Is there any wisdom you have to share with us? Anyone who feels like maybe they're just one decision away from taking that next step to be sober or to improve their mind?
Yeah, just lots of hope for people. Hopefully, you got some hope and encouragement out of this. If you're struggling, I've been there. I know how horrible it is. But I can assure you, without equivocation, better days are ahead. But please just release your unwillingness to try something new and give it a shot. Whether that's with Massimo, me, your own methods, um, nothing good will start to happen. No patterns will change until you begin to push through and start the process. Okay. And then little by little, it'll get easier and easier as your brain starts to experience new and better patterns, new and better days. It'll start to then want to do more of it. Okay. So it's just, please take the first step.
Thank you so much for that, George. Well, to everyone listening, keep fighting for yourself and don't stop because the pressure hits. I'm Massimo Rigatti. This is the Sober Method Podcast. Please like, subscribe, follow, and leave a review and share this episode with someone who needs it. Remember, your future is sober.